Yo, what's up? Happy New Year! 2019 has finally come to a close. I'm not gonna lie, it's been a long and drawn out year, and I'm super excited to welcome this new decade. You know, just in retrospect, there's been so many trends that came and went that just 10 years ago almost felt like we lived on a completely different planet. My sister and I were actually talking about this the other day, you know, just like discussing some of the things that are like commonplace in 2019 that seems so far-fetched in like 2010, you know, because back in my day, I was told don't talk to strangers on the internet and don't go into a stranger's house or car. But with apps like Uber and Airbnb, I can literally summon a stranger over the internet for the sole purpose of getting into their car or their house. Shit's wild. It's a different time we're living in. But yeah, we've all lived a very eventful decade. We've lived past the trends of skinny jeans and snapbacks, the end of the world in 2012, and of course, the greatest summer ever, 2016. And we've had some fantastic music that helped us get through these years. Here are my personal favorite albums of the decade. Alright, so I know I said albums, but I also want to include EPs and mixtapes, so it's just a more broad list in general. On top of that, this isn't going to be a definitive, most influential, bestest, most awesome albums of the decade. Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the ones that mean the most to me.
If your album did not make the cut, it's not on my list, I don't care, you know? I wasn't thinking about you when I made this list. I was thinking about me.
You know, these are the albums that shaped how I enjoy music and how I create my own music. Of course, 10 years is a long time, so there's tons of albums that went under my radar, just not my cup of tea, or I just didn't finish. Just my opinion, take it with a grain of salt. And I'm going to be splitting up this list into 5 sections. I'm going to have 5 non-hip-hop albums and 5 hip-hop albums because that's what I mostly listen to. But before we get into that, I do want to mention some honorable mentions. I do want to talk about some honorable mentions. This is going to be a long video, so here are a few timestamps. Alright, so I have 2 K-pop albums in my honorable mentions, because if you know me, you know I like my K-pops. I have Wings by BTS and Exodus by EXO. Wings is my favorite project from BTS. My favorite single from them is on there, and I love how each member got their own solo song on the project. It feels like they took the concept of Korean boy group and they just focused on the boys. You know what I mean? Exodus, on the other hand, is a beautiful album that shows how strong the members are as a team, each song playing to each member's strengths. It's also got some really interesting production with some super smooth R&B tracks. Here are my favorite tracks off of these projects. Another honorable mention is Space Lace's Overdrive EP. It's a high energy, balls to the wall, insane dubstep EP with some of the most unique sound design I've ever heard. And in the genre of heavy bass music, it is very difficult to create your own sound, especially when so many artists are trying to sound like who's ever the most popular at the moment. I feel like this project is the perfect reminder of what it means to be different. My favorite songs on here are Kaiju and Chappas. And my last 2 honorable mentions are Tyler the Creator's Flower Boy and Vince Staples' Big Fish Theory. This is my favorite project from Tyler. To me, I think it's his most well-rounded project. You know, using a lot of lush chord progressions to make very catchy songs.
Jabba nama nama, faba laba kaba, saba daba jabba, haba namba laba.
You know, it's a very gorgeous cinematic project that set itself apart from a lot of the trap albums that came out that year. Big Fish Theory by Vince Staples also does the same thing, but instead of using jazz instruments that Flower Boy used, Big Fish Theory uses EDM, with incredible production from producers like Sophie, GTA, and Flume. Not to mention, there's a surprise Kendrick Lamar verse on this, bro. Bro. I love both of these albums, and I would put them in my actual list, but I got into both of these projects kind of late, and I haven't really had enough time to fully appreciate them. Here are my favorite tracks, and that concludes my honorable mentions. Oh, just in retrospect, I noticed that when I was editing this, I didn't have any albums from 2019 on here at all. So I'm just gonna say them now. Welcome Home by Aries and Anonymous's There Is No Threat. Here is my favorite non-hip-hop albums of the decade. At number 5, I have my favorite EDM project, Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites by Skrillex.
But Praxi, why would you say that? Don't you know that dubstep is cringe?
Huh? Okay, so most of y'all can't relate to this, but that's because you guys weren't 13 years old when this shit dropped. When this EP came out, it was a game changer. You gotta remember that this was unlike anything else that came out at the time. Skrillex was fusing Reese basses from drum and bass songs and put drum rhythms and synths from electro house and dubstep. Skrillex unknowingly changed the landscape of EDM for years to come. On top of that, Scary Monsters still holds up damn near 10 years later. The production is top notch on here. And this was also the project that made me want to produce. My favorite tracks off of this is Scary Monsters, Kill Everybody, and Rock and Roll. The next up is a pretty niche pick, but it's New Religion, Hyena by They. You're probably thinking, wait, who are they? Well, I'll tell you. They are a duo consisting of the members Drew Love, the vocalist, and Dante Jones, the producer. Together, they created this album that's a fusion of grunge and R&B with a lot of hip-hop elements in between. Their songs are extremely catchy and give off this cool bad boy vibe. Dante kills it on the production of this, and Drew really shines through with a lot of his singing.
I don't wanna wait for our lives to be over.
And the album flows really well too. You know, each song is a banger, back to back to back to back to back to back again, I'm back again, and snap again. But yeah, each song hits, and they all hit different from the last track. It's a super smooth album, and you'll most likely get hooked from the beginning. My favorite tracks on this are U-RITE, Dante's Creek, and The Deep End. Alright, this is a pretty white girl pick, but I gotta go with AM by Arctic Monkeys. I love this album. It's got this cold, minimal style with a lot of emphasis on short, catchy melodic motifs. By the second hook of any song, you'll probably be singing along. And Alex Turner's vocals, oh my god! The album flows great. The high energy songs keep you grooving, the slow songs hit you in your feels, and this album is cohesive, but it's pretty dynamic in the feels department. Hipster memes aside, this album is actually one of those things that kind of showed how indie music can ironically be mainstream. It's cool, it's groovy, it's sexy, and the cover art is super aesthetic. My favorite tracks on here is Do I Wanna Know, Knee Socks, and Why'd You Only Call Me When You're High. And Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino is fucking boring. Next up is Anderson .Paak's Malibu. Hearing this project just puts me in a good mood. It's so groovy and uplifting, and Anderson's energy is just so contagious that eventually you'll just start smiling like him. The vibe of this album is so West Coast. You know, you get some cool, dope G-Funk vibes with some of the songs and some of the crazy, groovy bass lines. I love Anderson's storytelling on this record too. He does a really great job of conveying what he's feeling at a certain moment with some creative wordplay and metaphors that vividly paint moments of his life. You know, even the saddest songs are still presented in a pretty upbeat, uplifting, and damn near gospel way, and the features on here are really good. BJ the Chicago Kid, Schoolboy Q, Rhapsody, The Game, Talib Kweli. You mean Talib, lyrics stick to your rib? I mean, that's my favorite CD that I play in my crib. This album makes me feel like I'm floating above Malibu Beach right at Golden Hour. It's one of these projects that I play just to remind myself that I have a soul. Jesus, that was kind of dark. My favorite tracks on here are Put Me Through, Am I Wrong, and Come Down. And my #1 favorite non-hip-hop album is of course a Korean hip-hop album, DPR Live's Coming to You Live.
Feeling like a villain lately, I've been killing all these lame rappers in the building. I ain't done hell no, I ain't leaving. Tell my crew we counting millions, middle fingers to the ceiling.
I love this album so much. The production on here is super crisp and clean, using a lot of lush chords and cool synths, mixing a lot of trap elements with future bass elements. And I love how effortless DPR Live just kind of glides over his beats. I love his tone, his flow, and his extremely catchy melodies. Another thing that really hooked me into his music was how seamlessly he transitions between English and Korean, even rhyming English words with Korean words in the same line.
You a bag, drink you like a bottle, yeah, I
thought it was really cool. There's some great features on here, like R&B singers Dean, Crush, and Jay Park. Do you know who Jay Park is? He's signed to Rock Nation. Bro, he knows Beyonce. And great rap features from Loco, Kim Hyo-won, G2, and one of my favorite rappers ever, Dumbfounded. It's an awesome album, and it's one of those projects that I try to base my work off of. My favorite tracks on here are Cheese and Wine, La Puta, and Please. And here are my favorite hip-hop albums of the decade. At #5, we have Brockhampton, Saturation. The whole damn series. I lumped all three of them together because the projects all came out in 1 year, so for the most part, the songs were made in a similar headspace. Either way, each album was great. You gotta remember, when these albums came out, it was at the height of SoundCloud rap. So, you know, I just got really accustomed to hearing distorted 808s, spacey melodies, trap hi-hats, and all that. So when I heard the crisp and clean beats, it was just the perfect palate cleanser for me. Smells like ginger. All the vocal performances are great. You know, the team has great chemistry with each other, and they do a great job feeding off of the last member's energy from song to song. I might go in Estella. I feel like Matthew McConaughey. I don't care for what they gotta say. Tony Perkins, drop the weight. You know, each of their songs are so catchy and they give off such a unique vibe. And on top of that, Bareface's beautiful outros are the perfect songs to play while watching fireworks. I also noticed that the Bareface outros kind of mimic the quality of the Spider-Man films, the Sam Raimi ones. These albums are godly. My favorite songs from each album are Star, Summer, and Rental. Kendrick Lamar, Section 80. No, Section 80 is not Kendrick's best album. It's not his most artistic, it's not his most palatable, it's not his most one with Humble or DNA, but that's what I love so much about this project. A lot of what Kendrick ended up expanding on in his future projects can be seen in Section 80, like his prowess for storytelling, his ear for jazz instrumentation, and his incorporation of spoken word poetry in his projects. Each song is so smooth and slow, and it just wraps you up in his world that he's building. I also love the features on this. I love the vocals from Colin Monroe, BJ the Chicago Kid, and Ash Reiser. And the only other rapper on here is Absol, and I think he fits perfectly with Kendrick's energy. I absolutely love so many songs on this, but I gotta choose Rigamortis, Blow My High, ADHD, and of course High Power. Produced by J. Cole, by the way. IDK, I Was Very Bad.
PG County Police, get your hands above your fucking head!
Stick a middle class kid in a bad school.
This album is a beautiful, emotional roller coaster. When I first heard the project and I saw the album title, I thought it was going to be one of those gangbanging storytelling with conscious lyrics type of albums. But about halfway through the project, it does take a turn for more smooth R&B-esque vibes on tracks like Windows Up and Birds and the Bees. Then we got some conscious bangers like 17 with a 38 and No Words, and then I'm completely floored by the emotion from songs like No Shoes on the Rug, Leave Them at the Floor, and Black Sheep, White Dove, 2 songs discussing his feelings about his late mother. I also love the bonus track on this album, Baby Scale. It works as a perfect recap of the album, really cementing all of his feelings and themes he tells, but over 2 really hard beats.
I'm the best rapper where I'm from. Far as I'm concerned, nobody better. Fuck your analytics, fuck a stream.
Production is A1 on here with a mix of trap and boom bap and R&B that adds a cool cinematic feel to a storytelling album. And we also have some really crazy features from artists like Swizz Beatz, Chief Keef, and MF Doom. It's one of those projects that I throw on and just listen to from start to finish. My favorite tracks on here are Pizza Shop, Birds and the Bees, and Baby Scale. Logic, Under Pressure. This is one of those projects that really stuck with me over the years. This was my first big introduction into Logic's music, and the only other song I heard previous was The Spotlight, but I didn't really bother listening to his mixtapes at the time. But once I heard the intro to this project, I knew that it was going to be something special. I don't know if you guys realize this yet, but I love albums that introduce us into the artist, and I'd consider Under Pressure to be the perfect introduction album. When you make an album, you need to express exactly who you are, where you come from, and what you want to accomplish. We all learned this within the first 2 tracks on Under Pressure. You know, with the intro track reminiscing about him making a name for himself, and with Soul Food we get a look into Logic's upbringing and his hardships. And as the record goes on, you can notice how even though the vibe and tone change from song to song, the overall feeling of anxiety or feeling under pressure is there lyrically. I also love the interesting ways Logic decides to tell stories on this album, like how part of Gang Related is told through the point of view of his older brother, or Logic describing the life he wished he had on Growing Pains, and the breakup song Nikki, which is actually just a song about him quitting cigarettes. And of course we gotta talk about the 9-minute journey of a song, Under Pressure. Under Pressure is one of my favorite songs of all time, and it perfectly captures all of the themes and instrumentation throughout the project. It's just beautiful, and Till the End is a nice uplifting closer to the project. I also enjoy listening to the original version of Under Pressure over the deluxe version. I wasn't a huge fan of the extra songs. But either way, this project is fantastic, and it pains me so much as a Logic fan that his newer projects are just so lacking.
Balls, nigga.
My favorite tracks on here are Soul Food, Gang Related, Metropolis, and Under Pressure. And number 1, Kari, Intern Aquarium. This is the project that I personally relate to the most. You know, as much as I love I Was Very Bad and Under Pressure, of course I appreciate them for what they are, but I haven't gone through what they've gone through, so it's hard for me to relate to it. But Kari's project was exactly what I needed to hear when I heard it. I first heard this back in 2016, and I'm gonna be honest, I was going through one of the toughest times of my life. You know, I was straight out of high school, and for family reasons, I had to get a job just so I could provide food on the table. You know, I didn't have a YouTube channel or anything, and I really wasn't going anywhere with my music. So, you know, I had to work this dead-end minimum wage retail job. It was tough at the time. When I first heard this project, I hear Kari talking about being in a rut and knowing his self-worth and quitting his job to pursue his dreams. And that's exactly what I needed to hear. But it's not about the messages in the songs either, but the songs themselves are also really good. The production on here is incredibly atmospheric and really bouncy. Kari's lyrics are witty and charming, filled with a ton of wordplay and anime references, which I love.
You scared you're a meshy, you are messing with my spirit gun.
Jermaine Fowler also puts on great performances for the skits portraying Kari's boss.
Hey, Carrie, come on in, man. Close the door. Is it locked? Good. That sounded like I was gonna fuck you, but listen, man, my weekend was nuts, man.
I also love the themes on some of these tracks, not just the heartfelt ones, but songs like Ambidextrous, where he's just flexing, his remix of Swell's track I'm Sorry, where he's in his feels, and 2 AM Thirst Ballad, where he's just trying to fuck, and the project just flows great from song to song. From the intro song Interlude to the final track Find Me, you just feel so proud of Kari. You know, this project really is a great story of finding your own path in life, living with your vices and hardships, and turning your dreams into a reality. I love this album to death. I even got his autograph. The project is on Spotify and Apple Music, but not all of the tracks are, so if you want the whole experience of the project, you gotta listen to it on SoundCloud. My favorite tracks on here are 2 AM Thirst Ballad, Find Me, and 60. And that concludes my favorite albums of the decade. Now that you have some more insight on the projects that shaped my musical career, you can get started on yours with Melodics. Melodics is a desktop app that teaches you the basics of the piano. All you need is a MIDI keyboard. Whether you are completely new to the piano or have a few years under your belt, Melodics has a huge collection of courses and lessons for you. With every practice, Melodics keeps track of your accuracy and timing and lets you know what you need to improve on. You practice exactly what you want to learn and move at your own pace. There's also a huge selection of genres to learn, ranging from classical, hip-hop, future bass, and many more. And the knowledge you gain from Melodics can definitely be used outside of the app, for when you're working on your own music, jamming in a studio session, or even performing live. If you want the app, click the link in the description below to get a special deal. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. I also want to thank everyone for 300,000 subscribers. You guys mean the world to me. I also realized I didn't have an album for 2012, so I'm gonna pick Good Kid, Mad City. This is pretty much the end of the video, so check out my social media, have all that right there, and stay tuned for my next video. It's about Smoke Perp. See you guys in the next one. Peace.